What if we went on a journey to a continent everyone knows, yet remains so mysterious? This continent, you carry it with you every day. It's your skin. In Planet Skin, presented by Codif Technologies Naturelles, we will navigate through the different landscapes of our skin. We will meet the local populations and try to understand their interactions with each other and the outside world. We will dive into the heart of its ecosystem and retrace its history through the ages. My name is Marjorie Murphy, and I will be your guide on this journey created by Cécile Coumot.
Our skin is a planet.
In this first episode, we will observe the planet for its climate, vegetation, landscape, decrypt the geography of our corporal envelope to better understand its vital role. On this exploratory journey, we will be accompanied by two guides, Romuald Vallée, a chemist who became interested in biology, scientific director of Codif, and Jean-Claude Le Joliffe, a cosmetologist. Imagine, we are aboard a small tourist plane flying at 30,000 feet. We fly over this immense planet. We have to gain altitude because the skin is the largest organ of the human body. Overall, it measures 2 square meters in size and weighs between 3 and 4 kilos. Well, more or less, because measuring the area of this planet, as you will see, is not simple. If we delve into every nook and cranny, every fold, it is very likely that we will exceed 2 square meters. Then this planet would be even larger.
If we flatten it all out without paying attention to the folds, etc., we get to about 2 square meters. But it's a bit like the length of the coast in Brittany. Until recently, it was said to be 2,700 kilometers, which is enormous. Already a third of the length of the European coasts. But now we think it's closer to 3,500 kilometers with the precision of GPS and satellites. So I can't really tell you. But if we used satellites, taking the example of our small plane, flying over this extended surface with wrinkles, then maybe in the end, over time, this surface becomes larger and larger. Because they represent an erosion or subsidence of the terrain, that's what these wrinkles are. In a way, our face is an erosion of the terrain. Over time, this subsidence becomes more pronounced. So I think that as we age, the total surface of the skin, exposed or not, increases.
In short, Romuald Vallée is convinced
our skin, it is a planet.
Over a territory this immense, you can well imagine that there are multiple different landscapes, climates, vegetation, altitudes, and populations. Each region is different. The skin of a single person harbors both desert and tropical zones. The Sahara and the Amazon combine on 2 square meters. A quick overview with Romuald Vallée. Let's start with the scalp.
The scalp is normally covered with hair. There, it's warm, it's humid, it's very dense, and it resembles a very dense forest. And there will be a population. There will generally be little tanning since the trees prevent the sun from reaching the surface. Let's take another example, the top of the arm. There we will find a few trees, a few hairs. Well, it depends on the person, but there are usually fewer hairs than on the scalp. And so the area is less warm, less humid. And then let's take the armpits. It's warm, it's sheltered from the sun. On the other hand, there is dense vegetation, at least originally, and it's warm and humid.
Of course, this geographical map is not the same for all individuals. The skin, being the organ most in contact with the outside, will adapt, react to its environment. Pollution, sunlight, humidity will all make it more or less dry, more or less thick. What happens inside our bodies is also reflected on our skin, our diet, the medications we take. All of this modifies our skin landscape. All these elements that beautify or attack our skin, this is known as the exposome. Yet, despite all these differences, seen from our little tourist plane still flying over, common elements to all humans emerge. The first layer, visible to the naked eye, is the stratum corneum, the upper layer of the epidermis.
Then you have an underlying layer, which is the epidermis, which is quite amazing.
Étonnant.
Jean-Claude Lejoliffe.
Parce que d'abord, c'est un organe.
Because first of all, it's an organ characterized by the phenomenon of renewal. Every day you make new skin in the form of what we call keratinocytes, which are the component cells that produce keratin. This renewal process has multiple functions. First, this renewal is responsible for creating what we call the barrier effect, which is one of the essential functions of the skin, as a protection mechanism for the organism. The part of the skin responsible for this barrier effect is what we call the epidermis. This outer layer has been presented as a kind of wall with bricks and cement, but as time has gone on, we now realize that it's much more complicated than that. In fact, epidermal biologists nowadays tell us that it's not a wall with cement and bricks. That's far too static. In fact, it's an extraordinary dynamic structure that resembles much more a sort of chainmail than anything else. It introduces, if you will, the idea of plasticity of the skin.
Donc ça introduit, si vous voulez, l'idée de la plasticité.
This epidermis is a real layer cake. Below the corneal layer, or terrestrial crust, 4 other layers are stacked like scaffolding, with no trace of any blood vessels.
Or, c'est une couche, si on devait utiliser une image, c'est qui grouille.
Now this layer, if we were to conjure up an image, it teems in a certain way. It's very alive. It needs to be nourished. So it will be nourished by a very particular process called peripheral microcirculation. That is to say, a network of blood vessels ranging from larger ones in the very deep layers to very fine ones called capillaries. In fact, in the superficial part of the dermis, and therefore in the rather lower part of the epidermis, they'll produce what we call microvilli. They're very small strands, like wool strands that branch out to feed the skin. They're something like Velcro that comes and attaches there, nourishes the epidermis with nutrients, with oxygen. Skin doesn't breathe from the outside. You can see the epidermis, the microvilli. You can see the microcirculation. What does that look like? It's the rosy cheek.
C'est quoi? C'est le rose aux joues?
This life, it exists in a